everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Esther Akanj, and I'm an academic trainer for the Center for Teaching and Learning. Today's session is titled Tools for Effective Communication with NCU alum, Yorixa Rivera Acevedo. Thank you for being here with us today. Just a reminder, I am recording the webinar, and the video will be posted on the CTL LibGuides page and the CTL YouTube page within 24 hours. If you have questions throughout today's session, please use the Q&A for those questions. And for conversation and dialogue, please use the chat feature located at the bottom of the Zoom window. We also have the raise hand feature, which will probably become available to you during the practice sessions of this webinar. With that, I would like to turn it over to Yorixa Rivera Acevedo.
Thank you so much, Esther. Welcome, everyone. Like Esther said, my name is Yorixa Rivera Acevedo, and I'll be your presenter for today. Let me just share my screen real quick. And thank you for joining our webinar for Tools for Effective Communication. A little bit about me. My name is Yorixa Rivera Acevedo. I'm a North Central University alumni with a master's degree in global training and development. I'm originally from Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, where I lived most of my life until 2013 when I moved to Orlando, Florida, after completing my bachelor's degree in the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. I'm currently working in a startup company called Rippling in their insurance department, where I use the skills that I learned during my time in NCU to develop our department and expand our company as it is ever growing. Before we begin, let's take a look at the agenda for today. We'll first start off with a brief introduction into the process of effective communication and its components, and then we'll take a deeper look into each of the components that are within the process. Starting with encoding the message, we'll take a look at the best practices for sending the correct message to your audience. Mediums of transmission, we'll discuss how to best format your message to your audience. Decoding the message, we'll take a deeper look into the factors that influence how the audience interprets your message. Finally, feedback. We'll discuss the importance of listening to your audience reactions as part of the communication process. And then we'll close in, we'll take a look at some practice scenarios where you can apply the tools that we have just discussed. Introduction. Communication is the pillar that moves the world around. Some might disagree and argue that it's money. But truthfully, how far would money take you if you don't have the means to communicate what you need or desire? Dive in and learn how to better communicate with each other. As we all know, the simple fact or the simple act of communication has become a rather controversial topic in recent times. In a time where methods of communication are so widely available, it is shocking to see how the situations have been escalated out of proportions over the simple difference of opinion, misinformation, or misinterpretation of facts. Whatever your stance may be about certain topics, it's important to remember that ideas are not a one-size-fits-all. Instead, they are fluid. They can be adapted and changed as needed. How these are communicated to others can also impact how they are viewed and regarded by them. This is important to keep in mind. During this webinar, we will explore techniques that have proven to be successful for communicating effectively with others. We'll take a look at the communication skills in the world today and how this have changed, as well as the communication skills in technology, and how the fact that you don't have to face your audience after you share your piece or your views about a certain topic has impacted the communication process. Effective communication is one of the most important skills in life to develop, yet it is often taken for granted. The ability to communicate with others is regarded as a trait that sets humans apart from other mammals. Although if you ask me, that's up for debate if you take a look at the world today. To achieve effective communication, a good rule of thumb is to look at the message being communicated from the receiver's point of view. To ensure the correct interpretation of the message comes across, the message must be fitted to the receiver's understanding. Keep in mind how the intended receiver processes information, the lenses from which they review the world, and everything in it. This will help you format the message to be received as intended and avoid any unnecessary conflicts. Let's take a look into the communication process and their components. There are a variety of models that can be used to study and explain an interaction. However, the basic components of the communication process tend to remain the same. We start with encoding the message, transforming the message from the form of symbols that represent ideas or concepts into a message that others understand. Mediums of transmission, how the message is communicated to the receiver. Decoding the message, how the receiver interprets the message. And feedback, the reactions by the receiver to the message that was transmitted. Now let's explore these. During the encoding process, the sender uses language and symbols believed to be understood by the receiver. Intent is very important during this part. It's important to be aware of one's biases during this process to ensure that the message is transmitted in a clear and respectful manner. When transmitting the message, there are a few things to keep in mind to make sure that the message is being transmitted correctly and clearly. First off, think before you speak. Organize your thoughts into a coherent message. There is no shame in admitting, There's no shame in admitting that in an escalated situation, this is easier said than done. The best way to achieving this is to practice it constantly until it becomes second nature. Practice taking a few deep breaths every time that you're about to engage someone in conversation. It doesn't have to be always in a professional manner. Do it in your private life, in your personal life. Every time you're about to engage someone, take a few deep breaths and then start the conversation. This is always a great way to get control of your temper and de-escalate a situation as well. Another effective tool is the use of I statement versus you statements. You statements tend to come out as your shifting blame or actually blaming somebody for something that you're not necessarily doing. The situation you're just communicating what's happening, but the fact that you're saying you did this makes it sound like you're attacking them. Be respectful towards your listener. Be mindful of how you're communicating your message. The tone and the words being used can change the message you're trying to pass on. If you say I'm happy with a sad tone of voice, do you expect your audience to believe you? However, if you say with an upbeat tone of voice, even if it's fake, your audience will be more inclined to believe you. The same goes for the words that you're using for sending the message. The message is received differently when you describe a person as a whiner versus just them being emotional. Be clear about the message you're trying to communicate. Say what you want, feel, or need. Contrary to popular belief, we are not mind readers, although that'd be a great ability to have when it's time to choose where to eat, right? Don't be vague about what you're trying to tell the other person. Say what you want, say your piece, and don't try to get them to understand you in a way that's not really understandable. Mediums of transmissions. The sender can select verbal or nonverbal methods. The method selected should match the urgency of the message. Some examples of verbal methods include phone conversation, in-person meeting, and Zoom meetings. Verbal methods rely on tone and intonation as well as emphasis. Putting emphasis on a different word can change the entire meaning of the sentence. For example, practice using this sentence on the slide. Read the sentence and give emphasis to a different word each time. Notice how the message communicated changes every time that you change the word. I'm going to give you a couple minutes so you can try it. Let me know what you find. As a bonus, try it with a different intonation. See if that changes the meaning or that changes how you're perceiving the sentence. I'll give you just one more minute. Nonverbal methods. Nonverbal methods can be somewhat problematic, as the reader is the one that provides their own intonation to the written and unspoken word, which might not be what the speaker's intentions are. So keep that in mind when you're writing anything. Some examples include email or letter, mostly used for professional purposes, because let's be honest, when was the last time you wrote an email or a letter that was not intended for professional purposes? Text can be used for both professional and casual purposes, because in this time and age, there's a chance that most of us has written a text to your boss or your colleague about work-related matters. And body language. This can be sometimes used unconsciously. Please keep in mind that to be believable, your body language must be aligned with the verbal communication. Being able to recognize the cues within ourselves and others about the message your body language is conveying can affect how the interaction proceeds and whether the desired results are achieved by said interaction. If you're acting closed up, but you're trying to sound like you're engaged and you're opening, there are conflicting messages there and it's not going to get across the way that you want it to. Some examples include your facial expressions, which can sometimes get you in trouble if you don't control your face expressions. The standing or sitting manner, body swaying. If you're nervous, you tend to body sway and you're not sounding believable and reliable. Hand and arm gestures. This is not something that you have to avoid, but keep them in check. You don't want to come off too strong or too much hand gestures, but you also don't want to come off too soft. If it's needed, use them. Your breathing rate, eye contact, blushing, and fidgeting. Decoding the message. How your audience interprets your message depends on how this message is transmitted to them. Remember, the tone and word emphasis can change the meaning of what's being said, so be mindful of them. Your body language also plays a big role in how the receiver interprets the message you're giving them. Body language is not something that you have to steer away from, but it can be useful to your advantages. Some examples include when you're trying to communicate with someone and express support to them, mimic the other person's body language. When you're trying to convince another person to invest in your product or buy a product from you, use a low vocal pitch, stand tall while maintaining positive eye contact. Do not be afraid to use hand gestures when you're trying to explain your point across. Hand gestures can help you highlight important parts of your message that you want to emphasize. Again, don't overdo it, but don't underdo it either. Use your judgment for this part. Now let's take a look at some possible factors that can affect the communication process in a negative way. The methods of communication used during an interaction can affect how the message is delivered or understood by your audience. For example, using implicit versus explicit. Implicit, imply what's meant to be communicated versus say what's meant to be said. For example, putting an X on an item that you don't want others to touch versus writing out do not touch on that item so that others know. Although that can also backfire because sometimes people don't read it, but the intention was there. Another example, put in the trash bag by the door so that the first person out takes it with them. Versus telling the person, hey, when you're on your way out, please take that trash bag with you. Written versus verbal. Since the interpretation of the written message is up to the receiver, it can leave room for misinterpretation if the text is not clear or formatted properly for their understanding. Meaning if it's vague and you're not making the right intonation or the right words, the other person is not going to get the message. If you're being, let's say, you're trying to sound like you're trying to sound precise, but your words are not conveying this message, it can leave room for misinterpretation. In a verbal communication, the tone that you're using can cause misinterpretation if it's not aligned with your message. If you're coming off too strong, if you're screaming to somebody while you're trying to congratulate them about something, they're not going to feel congratulated. They're going to feel attacked. They're going to be defensive. And the whole communication or the whole interaction is going to have a negative impact on them. Other causes for miscommunication: poor listening skills, not applying the correct type of listening to the speaker. We'll discuss this in a few slides, so don't worry. Poor speaking skills, not speaking in a structured manner that the audience can follow. Talking about the same thing in a different manner. Our lenses of the world can influence how we communicate. Since not everyone's views of the world are the same, the way one expresses themselves might not be clear to everyone in your audience. We all come from different backgrounds and experiences. Your experiences of the world might not be the same experiences that I've encountered, and hence something that you see in a positive light might not have the same impact for me, and vice versa. Since our standpoints on the matter are conflicting, these can lead to miscommunication, even if it's not intended. So keep that in mind. Mental models. Our mental models also affect how we view the information provided and whether we pay attention to it or not. Our mental models are the way that we understand the world and everything in it. They are comprised of explanations that we have created for processes based on our personal knowledge and experience. Ultimately, the interpretation of the message will be influenced by the lenses from which your audience views the world. There's no way around it. You just have to be aware of it and know how to adapt to it. Now let's explore these causes a little bit further as well. Types of listeners. Understanding listening styles can assist you in the communication process. Learning about the type of listener you default to in most situations can help you prepare and adjust accordingly to different interactions. There are times that the speaker might be intimidated by you and will not feel safe to share what's on their mind. Be aware of your own demeanor as a listener to make sure that it matches the situation you're on. Let's take a look at some of these listening styles. The critical listener. Listening to understand the information given by analyzing it thoroughly and arrive at your own conclusion. The listener focuses and analyzes the facts being provided about the subject at hand. Empathetic listener. Listening to understand the emotions being conveyed by the messenger. The listener creates a trusting atmosphere where the messenger feels free to express and show their emotions about a topic being discussed. Facial expressions, tone of voice, body language are key elements that impact this interaction. For this type of listening, the speaker's emotions are more important than the facts being conveyed. If you've ever been to a therapist, they are relentless at doing this. The reductive listener. This type of listening is often associated with being impatient. When engaging this type of listening, you are guiding the person to get to their point quickly. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It is sometimes useful. This type of listening is often also associated with high stress environments. The expansive listener. For this type of listening, there's no rush in getting to the point of the message. The messenger can take as long as they want in their communication. This is common when the messenger does not have a clear path for the point they're trying to make. Similar to empathetic listening, but you're most focused on the facts that they're relaying rather than the emotions. The passive listener is the act of listening without really paying attention to what's being said. Taking this approach in certain conversations can avoid unnecessary altercations, let's be honest. If you have worked or currently work in a customer services environment, there's a chance that you have engaged in this type of listening more than once with a customer that's just complaining, but not really looking for a solution. They just feel like venting. So you just let them vent. Active listening. The active listener. This is one of the most common or reference type of listening. This type of listening entails the receiver acting engaged throughout the entire conversation, no matter how long it is. It's characterized by nodding, making eye contact and maintaining eye contact, and making small comments here and there to let the speaker know that you're paying attention to them. Now let's try to practice these listening styles that we have just discussed. Your friend asks you to meet them for coffee. They start telling you about their new relationship and how hard it has been dealing with recent changes that have happened since COVID. What type of listening do you use?
Hello, everyone. This is an opportunity to be interactive. Oh, we do have something in the chat. I see.
Let me know if you need me to go back and like go through them again so that way you are aware.
That may be helpful. We have 2 comments in the chat so far. Shanda says empathetic. Carmen says active.
Let me go back. I'm gonna show them again.
Sure.
Just so that. We have the critical, empathetic, the reductive.
So, Belinda, you have a point. Passive and active.
You have expansive, passive, and active.
Then it says empathetic and active. Okay, can you use 2?
You can. I mean, as long as you're listening, we're all good. Let's try another one. You're out shopping for new electronics, maybe a new TV or a new computer. The salesman is telling you all the features on the item that you're currently looking at. What type of listening do you use?
Got a few responses coming in. Shannon says reductive, Kendall active, 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 active. A lot of actives going on here.
Yeah, support system. Very good.
Support systems.
What about critical? Wouldn't you want to like analyze what he's saying to come at your own conclusion? Just food for thought.
Y'all saying yes.
Yeah.
Yep, good point.
But I like the reductive too.
Yeah.
It's very true. You just want to know what you come there prepared and you want to know what you want to know.
Right.
Let's try another one. This is a high stress environment. Keywords there. Firefighters are called into an apartment complex that's caught fire. There's a compromise and cannot be used to evacuate the victims. They are waiting on their chief's orders to determine their plan of action. What type of listening are they using?
So far, we have active, expansive, critical, and active.
I'm curious, why expansive?
Empathetic and critical. Let's see who put expansive. Francis, would you like to expand on expansive? No pun intended there. Let's see, you have critical, critical and active, critical and empathetic, critical.
Okay, let's do one more. We have a few. You run into your cousin who always likes to be the center of attention. Make small talk. After you get a few words in, you start to get the feeling they're just looking for someone to listen to them as they talk. What type of listening are you using?
Definitely going passive on this one.
The one where you're just waiting for them to say more. You mean the expansive? But you just let them talk? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I can see that. You're gonna get them to the point fast, Francis. Get to it, get to it. Just a couple more. You run into an old friend from high school. You decide to go have lunch and catch up. They start telling you about their lives, their plans, and how they have made to make changes to accommodate recent restrictions and changes that have occurred since COVID. You patiently listen to them without any regards to how long they've been talking or rush to get to the point. What type of listening are you using?
Getting a couple of expansive here. Pretty much. In the chat.
A few minutes.
You got expansive and empathetic. Empathetic and active. I think it's interesting all the different perspectives that everyone has.
Right? That's the beauty of communication.
Right.
All right. Last one, promise. You are meeting your in-laws for the first time. They're telling you stories about your significant other and how much they have changed throughout the year. You're nodding and smiling at them, making occasional comments while maintaining eye contact. What listening style are you using? You're active and passive at the same time, Amanda? I like the critical. I like how we are very get to the point, please. I want to get as much information as I can.
Time is money.
Just one more minute. All right. Different cultures, different lenses. This is this goes with how talking about the same thing from different cultures. So when dealing with different cultures, please educate yourself prior to the interaction to avoid misunderstanding. Educate yourself in the communication styles they better respond to. Do they prefer passive aggressive or direct? Do they like to talk about the weather before getting to the point? Or are they relaxed in the sense that they take their time getting to know the person they're speaking to before getting their point across? For example, when working with individuals from India, make sure that you are making a direct request to them. This request has to be clear and specific with no room for error. The message is not formatted in such a manner. There's a risk that the correct message will not get across. To keep them engaged, the message will have to be delivered in a fast-paced manner while making sure that it includes enriching information, as knowledge is a valued asset in the culture. I've personally used these techniques to build a relationship with my colleagues from India. Being in a remote company where most of us we have people from all over the world, I've used these techniques to build relationships with my colleagues from India, to the point that we're even planning a trip to visit their hometown later on this year, which I'm pretty excited about because they talk about the food and I can't. I feel like I'm gonna gain 20 pounds if I ever go visit. An example that is a little bit closer to home, Canadians. Canadians have a reputation of being courteous and polite human beings. The culture is rooted in justice and compassion, quality and diversity, while also respecting the individual's liberty to find their own happiness. The communication style is more relaxed and can be conveyed in a more informal manner. If you're using humor, please keep in mind the cultural differences that can escalate any joke into a serious argument. Mental models. What are mental models? They are the explanation of our thought process for how a procedure works in the world. In other words, they are the explanations for how we understand the world. There are many advantages to understanding and learning about mental models. For example, they can be used to train your brain to be more efficient in critical thinking, which is always a very good skill to have. Take a look at 5 popular mental models that exist. First, principles thinking. This model consists of the following steps. You define the problem in your own words. You break down the problem to its basic components. Once the components have been identified, you change a few of them. And then you create a new solution from the ground up. I am so sorry. Second order thinking. It consists of thinking about the consequences and sub-consequences of the actions that you're about to take. There are times where revision of the plan of action established could avoid unnecessary conflict. Don't underestimate the advantages of rethinking your actions. Inversion. It consists of working the problem backwards. You start at the end and you end at the beginning, meaning you start with the solution that you're trying to accomplish. You establish what it is that you're trying to accomplish with the problem, and then you figure out what needs to happen immediately before that, and then immediately before that, and so on and so forth until you get to the starting point. Map versus territory. It consists of remembering that maps or representations of the problems that are created by us do not represent every single aspect of the problem. Maps are not 100% representations of reality. They are a simplified representation of reality, and they can be incomplete and imprecise. Feynman's technique. It is similar to the first principle thinking. It consists of breaking down a complex topic into simple terms for better understanding of it. Meaning you write down the problem or write down what you know about the problem. You keep things simple as if you were going to explain it to children. You work on the gaps of knowledge that you have identified during this process, and then you write and share your explanation with others. The last component of the communication process, feedback. This is the reaction received from your listener or your audience. There are simple things to keep in mind during this process. Remember to pause for a response from your listener. This is sometimes a hard thing to do, but please remember that bombarding your listener with information without giving them a chance to voice their opinions or to defend themselves will most likely result in either their emotions building up until they explode, or them shutting down completely and stop listening to what you're saying. Pausing for a response sends the message that you are interested in their opinion and that you want to make sure that they understood the message as intended. Otherwise, you risk losing their interest, their respect, and their attention altogether. Remember, we're listening to your audience to show empathy for their views and concerns about what was communicated. Don't dismiss their opinions. Here are some guidelines for empathetic listening. Focus on the person and clear your mind from distractions. If you're thinking about what you're having for dinner or what traffic will be like on your way home, you're clearly not paying attention to what's being said to you. And you might be missing important information being communicated. Actively listen to the speaker, but not to form a reply. Make sure that your body language reflects that you are open and unbiased. Listening only thinking about what your response will be can cause for the message to be misinterpreted and not all parts of the message to be heard on your part. Read between the lines to understand the emotions being communicated by the speaker. Listen carefully, as emotions are not always easy to be translated into words. Do not interrupt the other person as they speak. It disrupts their train of thought and can cause misinterpretation of the message. Let the other person finish their piece before jumping to any conclusions. Even if you believe you know where they're going, allow them the courtesy of getting there on their own. Plus, it's kind of rude. Repeat what you heard back to the speaker. Paraphrase what you heard and what emotions were conveyed by the speaker. This can help them clarify points that were misunderstood or unclear. It also provides the speaker assurance that you were paying attention to them. Our point is to keep in mind, always thank your audience for their time. Acknowledge that their time and attention are important to you. Acknowledging that their time and attention are important to you can make the difference between just another meeting or a meaningful interaction, even in your private life. By saying thank you for listening to your partner, to your friend, to a family member, you are letting that person know that you are aware that there are other things that they could be doing at that time, but that you value the fact that they'd rather spend that time listening to you. Being aware of the different types of listeners that exist and how to trigger a listener to adapt to a specific style can help create a better communication experience. We're often told that we should engage in active listening for all interactions. This is not always the case. Sometimes the messenger is only looking for someone to listen to them empathetically, or maybe they're looking for someone to give them a critical point of view about an item they're about to purchase. The type of listening that you're engaged on should match the situation. The important thing is to recognize which clues to give your audience when communicating with them so that they trigger the correct listening style. Remember, you're not a hammer and not everything is a nail. So sometimes you don't need to fix everything. Sometimes they just want to communicate that there's something that they need to vent about. Let's do some other practice scenarios. Have an escalated customer on the line. They have rejected each suggestion that you have given them to fix a problem. What do you do?
Can you pull up the options again?
Well, this is more of a you thing.
Oh, okay.
Like, how would you handle it?
Huh. Belinda says, ask for suggestions. That's a good one.
They're very escalating.
Huh?
Every time that you give them a yes.
Amanda is asking if they are their explicitives being used.
I'm sorry, Amanda, what are explicitives? Is it like curse words?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm like, what is that?
No worries.
It could be. To me, escalated doesn't necessarily use curse words, but it can get to that point. So if that's what you relate or that's what you associate with someone being escalated, then yes, they're using curse words.
I would always go with I'll send you to my supervisor in this case.
Honestly, what I have done anytime that I have an escalated situation, after I let them vent to whatever it is that they have on their chest, if it's something within my control, I take ownership of that issue. I let them know, hey, this is what I can do. This is what I'm gonna do. If I need to reach out to you, in my current role, we usually, depending on situation, we usually give them a turnaround time of maybe 2 days at max if it's an escalated situation. But I always let them know that I understand their urgency. I let them know that they are heard. I heard their urgency. I understand the issue. I'm gonna take ownership. I'm gonna get this fixed for you. I like that, Amanda. Yeah. If they're using curse words, that I can take that route. I can see it. It's a good course of action. I'll let them know this conversation is no longer being productive. Maybe we can continue at a later time when you have calmed down. Oh, you don't say calm down. What about this one? It's your first day on the job. You're the only employee from the US in your department. You're trying to get clarification about how the process works for a project that you're working on. After a few back and forth emails with your colleagues, you're still not clear about how the process works. The deadline for your project is in a week. What do you do? How do you use communication to your advantage in this? It's a very high-end job. You're an engineer, Amanda. You need to get this done.
Question, I see that the only employee from the US is in your department. Is it like a cultural, are there cultural differences, or is it just like language barrier kind of?
The job is remote. So pretty much both, Esther. I consider both. And we have that, like in my company or my current job, we have that. We have departments that are, you have one employee from the US and everybody else is in India, or you have one employee of the department is in the US and you have one employee that's in Germany and everybody's remote. So you kind of have to think outside the box about how do you get all these people to work together and understand what they're trying to do.
And also time zones can be an issue in a lot of cases.
For sure. I have that all the time. Whenever I have to do, like, we do office hours, and the person that's running office hours is not in Orlando, they're in California.
Right.
So if they do office hours at 10 a.m. their time, like 1 o'clock my time, I want to have lunch. What about sitting in phase, like a Zoom meeting? I believe somebody mentioned it before. They said a work session, I believe was the word that they used.
It's a working session.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, Belinda, too.
Yeah, a lot of people ask really good questions. I mean,
yeah.
Ooh, SharePoint is a good
But remember, written communication can sometimes be a little problematic. For situations like that, where you have gone back and forth, writing to them like, hey, this is my question, but they answer you in a way that you don't understand. I believe in-person communication or verbal communication would be better, because that way you can get the correct tone, you can get the correct atmosphere, you can ask the right questions, because you can see where the disconnect is. Like if I'm asking you, what's your weather like? And you're telling me, oh, it's 10 o'clock. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, like, is it raining? Is it cold? Etc. So, yeah. So sometimes, like, the urgency of the matter has to match the method that you use for the communication. If your project is due in a week and you have so many doubts, or maybe you have a specific doubt that you need to get out, but you're not using the right words, you need to work out what words work. It's better to do it verbally, because that way you can like troubleshoot, like, okay, so you're not getting that it's time zone that I'm asking you, you're not getting weather, so what do you use for this? And then you get the ball rolling. I like it. Okay. I believe everyone in this room or in this webinar has gone through this. There's been some unspoken tension between you and your partner lately. The latest straw was them not mailing out a letter that you left ready for them on their way for when they left to work. You left the letter by the car keys in a very visible place so that they see it as they leave and they take it with them. But they didn't. What do you do, or how do you remedy it? How do you remedy this for the future? That is really the question, Amanda. Did you ask them? All the cues were there. Like you implied, hey, this letter looks so nice here and it's all ready to go. And you go by the mailbox on your way out. Exactly. Tell them what you want. Get it out. Not everyone, maybe they're like focused on, oh, I'm late for work. Oh, I need to get this, and they don't notice the letter.
Also, maybe giving them like a deadline of when to pick it up or have whatever needs to be done.
For sure, Amanda. Talking it out is always good too. you you want the tension, Amanda. You like the tension. Yeah, exactly, Dana. Yes, I like that.
Leave a post-it.
Put a post-it in the keys. Hey, take the letter.
I think Amanda's passive aggressive there.
Yeah.
It's probably
I knew we have all done this. This happens. This is an everyday scenario. All right. Your friend is going through a hard time at work. You have not been able to meet their deadlines and quotas for a few weeks. They're scared that they will be reprimanded soon. You want to be supportive and show them that you are there for them should they need anything. How do you show them this? What do you do? How do you support them? This is tricky. For assistance. What can I do? Right, you just listen as they vent. Exactly. That is really the question. How can I help? Because if you're a problem fixer, you're gonna think that you want to fix it for them, but maybe that's not really what they need, and they just need to talk it out. So asking, how can I help? What can I do here? It's a good approach. I like it. But what do you need from me? I like it. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Just be supportive. Sometimes that's all they need. All right, brace ourselves. Brace yourself, everybody. This one's gonna get triggered. This one's gonna get triggering for everybody. Your Uncle Joe is coming for a family gathering. He's very political and very defensive / confrontational about his beliefs. Out of the 5 latest family gatherings, you have left 4 early due to confrontations with them. What do you do when they tell you he's about to join this one? How do you handle this? Yeah, I can see it. Just avoid it altogether. Good.
Ooh, someone's putting down boundaries. Let Uncle Joe know it's a family function and no politics.
Exactly. I think boundaries is very important, but you also don't want to avoid your family altogether. There's always going to be people. The point is that there's always going to be people that trigger you. There's always going to be people that put you out of your comfort zone or push your limits. You have to know in a conversation, there's always two sides. You have to set your boundaries, but you also don't want to shun people altogether. Because if you shun out everybody that you don't agree with, there might be a point that it's going to get lonely. That's good, Dana. Yeah, exactly. You just change the topic or avoid it. I do it. I have my cousin's husband is very Uncle Joe. No matter what we're doing in a family gathering, he always finds a way to bring in politics or certain things that we don't want to talk about. So I just nod along and then casually, oh, look at this person. He just arrived. And then we start talking about something else. Yeah. Alrighty. I like it. I like it. You have an employee whose first language is not English. They are having issues with their role. Every time you give them feedback, they respond with, I understand, but you don't see any progress in their job execution. What do you do? Yes, Francis, I just saw your post. You're right. Try to get common ground. What do we do for this one? Good point. I like it. I like it, Amanda. You're putting yourself like you're trying to understand their point of view. Get an interpreter. That's good. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a language barrier that you're not getting through. You might be saying all the right words, but if they don't understand what you're saying, it's not going to get across. Yeah. But what if you talk to them, but they still, because remember, let's think somebody who's from France and you're speaking English, but they don't speak English that well. And again, you're using all the right words. It's just a language barrier that you have to like go through. Yep. Resumes can be very impressive. That's what I do. In my role, I'm in charge of, it's like a buddy system where we evaluate other people. I have like a few buddies that I have to make sure that they're doing their job. I always ask them, what is your thought process for this scenario? What did you do on this case? Can you walk me through what you did? Yeah, ask them for feedback, like what's going on. Alrighty, and we're going back to listening styles. Do you guys need me to go back to those slides and remember a refresher kind of thing? Or you're good? And we can do some examples. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Review, okay. Let me go back there. We have, all right, so we have the critical. So you're listening to understand the information given by analyzing it thoroughly to arrive at your own conclusion. You have the empathetic. You listen to understand the emotions that the messenger is giving you. The reductive, where you try to get them to their point as quickly as they can. Expansive, they can talk for hours, you just listen to them, no rush. Passive, listening without really paying attention. And the active, you nod, you smile, you make comments here and there, you're always engaged. With me so far? Alrighty, let's go back to this. All right. You are trying to determine the best car to buy that suits your needs. What kind of listening do you do to the salesperson? What kind of listener is needed in this case? You are discussing your experiences while being bullied in school. What kind of listener do you need? Okay. You're doing an interview for your dream job and you're trying to keep the recruiter engaged in your conversation. What kind of listener do you need the recruiter to be? You're placing your order at Starbucks. What kind of listener is the barista usually? For what, Francis? You caught up on that. Okay, free topic. You engage in a conversation with no real point. You're just sharing experiences and ideas. Yep. Yeah. And your kid coming home from work, your kid coming home from your first day of school. You want to share everything you did during your day without any interruptions. You just want your audience to listen. What kind of listener are you looking for? Good job, everybody. It wouldn't do me any good if I didn't practice what I preach. So I want to thank you all for joining this webinar and for being such an active audience. Thank you again for your time, your patience, and for actually working with me through the scenarios. You've been an awesome audience. And in the words of the famous David Pumpkins, any questions?
Awesome, awesome. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Great job. Everyone's singing your praises in the chat, Yuritsa.
Another. Yes,
Yeah.
Carmen, I believe Esther says she's gonna.
Yes, the video will be up within the next 24 hours. I just have to edit, and I'll email it to everyone who actually attended or registered.
I know we're past our time, and I thank you again for staying with me.
Thank you all. All right, so we're going to take this time to go ahead and conclude just for the sake of time. Oh, Yuritsa, do you have any ways for people to contact you if they have any questions that we didn't get the chance to answer today?
I can leave. Where can I put my contact information, or should I just share the chat? Okay.
Yeah.
This is my email. It's quick.
just in case we didn't get a chance to answer any questions or we missed any of your questions, we'd like to thank Yurixa Rivera Acevedo for taking the time to present, and thank you all to the attendees for joining us today. As a reminder, the recording will be posted on the CTL LibGuides page and the CTL YouTube page within the next 24 hours. Again, thank you for attending, and we appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.